everyone, I'm Gabby, the editorial manager at Bookstr. We're here at James Marshall Media. We have the awesome opportunity to join an author, David Leite, who's going to be audio recording his book, his audiobook, and you definitely should ask him anything. Look at all of these awesome audiobooks. Let's go inside. Hi everyone, we're live.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Can everyone introduce themselves?
Yeah, I'm Beth Ives. I am the marketing director for Harper Audio.
Hi, I'm Sharon Rosenblum, and I am David Leite's publicist
Best publicist in the world.
at Day Street.
Day Street.
And I'm Paula Parker. I'm directing the book, and I have the pleasure of working with David, who is narrating this
And
book.
I am David Leite, and I am the author of Notes on a Banana, a memoir of food, love, and manic depression.
And behind us we have...
Oh,
yes.
I'm Rich Osborne. I'm engineering this project.
Great, so David,
Yes.
this is all about you.
Yes.
Can you tell us about your book?
Sure. Well, this is what we recorded. All, how many? 300?
366.
And 66 pages.
Every word.
Every word. And if I make a mistake, Paula will tell me, go back and you missed an or a the, or an it, or a s. So that's this, and we are almost done. Today's day 5. And the book is called Notes on a Banana, a memoir of food, love, and manic depression. And it's about, people ask me, and I say it's the story of the search for the truth of self. And it starts out as a search for self-discovery, and then it turns into self-acceptance. And it's those 3 buckets, the food, love, and manic depression. Food is because I grew up in this really crazy, food-obsessed Azorean family. And the Azores are the 9 islands off the coast of Portugal. And very Catholic, very devout, very, we tumbled over each other. We lived all over each other. And I didn't like being Portuguese. I wanted to be blonde hair. I wanted to have blonde hair and blue eyes. And I wanted a last name of Stevens or Nelson. I wanted to be the 7th Brady kid. I wanted Samantha Stevens and Darren Stevens to adopt me. To hell with Tabitha. I wanted to be their kid. And so there's a lot of shame. And so there's one theme that goes through, the shame of being Portuguese, the shame of being ethnic, and then finally embracing that. And I'm going to get emotional. And then the second one is, the second theme is the gay theme, the love. I started realizing that I like to play with easy bake ovens. I like to play mystery date. Some of you who are the right age will know what mystery date is. And I like to play with the girls rather than the boys who are out there, beating up other people and mooning people and dropping cats from the 2nd floor to see if they fell on their feet. I wanted to play with them. And then I suddenly realized my fate was sealed when I was taking the Sears catalog and going to the bathroom and flipping through the pages of the men's underwear section. And so it was about coming out and dealing with being gay and what it meant. And I had a girlfriend in college who's like, well, you just come out of the closet finally. I was in, I was out, I was in, I was out. I even got involved in a cult that supposedly changed gay men straight. And it's about embracing, finally, my sexual identity. And the last one, which was the hardest, was from a very early age, I could feel this darkness that was nibbling at the edges of my personality, of my personhood, at a very early age, and I didn't know what it was. And starting at about 11 years old, I started having these thundering panic attacks, and these periods of horrible blackness and disassociation, insomnia, and no one knew what it was. And so I threatened to kill myself if I didn't see a psychiatrist at 14. And I did see a psychiatrist. Was diagnosed with anxiety, which I do have, but that wasn't the diagnosis. And I went through 2 or 3 more decades with these thundering problems, just dropping out of life. Had to drop out of college twice. Had to rebuild my life several times until finally reading a book, Kay Redfield Jamison's masterpiece, An Unquiet Mind, I realized I was bipolar. I got diagnosed. Took 4 years to find the proper medication till I finally got diagnosed. And that kind of takes you through it. Now, lest you think this is a dark and somber book, it is not. Because Barbara Streisand makes an appearance. Hello, gorgeous. I am with Dr. Joyce Brothers on Hollywood Squares, and Paul Lind is smirking at me the whole time. I am one of the inmates in one floor of the Cuckoo's Nest, and Nurse Ratched hates me. I do this fabulous dance and song number from Chicago with my own lyrics. What other crazy things happen in the book? Oh, and I assure you that you will never, ever, ever look at a dispenser of fruit-flavored lip gloss the same after you read this book. I assure you that. So that's kind of the book in a nutshell. Any questions yet so far?
So far, we don't have any questions.
No questions, okay.
However, I am excited to go into the audio recording booth.
All right.
And I want to remind the viewers to watch and ask any questions. I'm going to be looking at my phone and seeing if there's anything I want to shoot out at you.
Great.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So, shall we go?
All right. Now, Rich, is this all set as far as position and everything?
It's really close.
Okay, do you want to do a...
Yeah, I'm just going to play a little bit from a couple days ago.
Okay.
Match it really quick.
All right.
And then you guys can just make sure that door is pulled tightly closed.
Sure. And then this is the section in which I burp a lot and I fidget a lot. Excuse me, like I burp right now. And two things you must always have: water and chapstick. Otherwise, you will have a very hard time. Do you want me to tell them where we are in the book, just so?
Yeah, tell us.
This is the very first time I am actually seeing a doctor to get medication that I take. I did, in a prior chapter, go to a doctor, got the medication, and put it in my sock drawer, never taking it, because I don't believe in medication at that time. So this is me actually doing it. I got to catch my breath, because sometimes it's like...
It's a lot of talking.
Yeah, it's a lot of talking, and there's a lot of words. Too many words. I don't know who wrote this damn book, but there's too many damn words in it.
I have one question.
Mm-hmm.
What is the chapstick for?
The chapstick is because you constantly lick your lips as you're doing this, and then it gets very dry. So therefore, you keep your lips greased and your throat lubricated, and you're able to... With all the mistakes, and you'll be surprised at how many mistakes I shall make.
All right, that sounded really good. I'm going to compare it really quick to yesterday.
Okay. Can you feed it through so I can hear it?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Yeah. Can you just feed it through so I can just hear it?
Oh, yeah.
It just helps me to kind of match it.
Well, I stalled, mentally flipping through the sticky pages of my cookbook. Mentally flipping through this.
All right, yeah, so that's about the same thing. Good. Okay.
And David, you can hear me?
I can hear you perfectly, yeah.
Good.
Okay.
That's the director.
That's the director, Paula Parker. The fabulous, marvelous, legendary Paula Parker.
All right, keep going.
You ready? Chapter 32, Bad Chemistry. Stuffed animals, colored blocks, dolls with missing limbs, and miniature versions of the chair I was sitting in were strewn on the floor around me. I felt absurd. Hang on. I felt absurd and disproportionately large. As I waited, I nervously squished the decapitated head of a Barbie doll under my heel. David Lindsay was flabbergasted that I'd lied. For the past year, he'd thought I was popping pills that were giving me what he called a floor.
David, let's go back, and this is an important sentence. David Lindsay was flabbergasted that I'd lied.
Sure.
You know, we want to,
Hit that, okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sure. David Lindsay was flabbergasted that I'd lied. For the past year, he thought I was popping pills that were giving me what he called a floor, a baseline I couldn't fall below. Technically, it hadn't been...
Let's go back. A baseline I couldn't fall below. Let's just see what that sounds like.
A baseline I couldn't fall below. Technically, it hadn't been a lie. I'd never said I took the pills, just that I filled the prescription.
David, I'm sorry. Let's have the D on I'd.
There we go again.
Yeah,
See? This is C.
Technically, it hadn't been a lie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Technically, it hadn't been a lie. I'd never said I took the pills, just that I filled the prescription. Okay, I gotta get back into David Lindsay's voice. He's talking very southern, and the drawl he's got, and You know David Lindsay the way he is. All right.
Oh, and you know, he tells it like it is.
He does.
And he's saying to you, I'm going to kick your ass up between your,
Yeah.
he's kind of PO'd at you right there.
He is right now. He is very mad at me.
He hasn't been in the past, but he is now.
This is the first time he is mad at me. Okay. This time, he said, I'm calling Jack myself. And if you don't take those fucking pills, I'm going to kick your ass up between your shoulder blades. That was how I ended up here, staring at Dr. Orenstein's diplomas.
Yes. Thank you.
Staring at Dr. Orenstein's...
Richard, I'm looking at Richard, the engineer. David, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Let's get the D on there.
I'd ended up here? Okay.
That's right.
That was how I'd ended up here, staring at Dr. Orenstein's diplomas in child psychiatry. Jack was away on vacation, and Orenstein was covering his cases. I'd have to endure an hour of questioning before I could get my hands on the medication.
David, I'm sorry, there's no the. It's just on
medication. I told you, this is not easy.
We have so many good comments from people.
Okay, yay! Should we answer them now or continue?
Yeah, let's just see what it's... Yeah.
Answer?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, first I want to say, Jim Carroll is saying,
Hi, Jim.
Hey, man, you read as well as you write.
Oh, man, Jim. Let's have lunch.
Gail is saying, this is not easy. You are so funny, my friend.
Thank you.
Ifra is saying, your voice is very clear, which makes understanding the text much easier.
You are a gem. That's all Paula doing that.
So, Mahogany is wondering,
Yes.
when you were writing the memoir, did you know an audiobook would follow? And did you know you would voice it?
I knew an audiobook would follow. In the contract, they said I had the option to do the audiobook. I haven't signed that part of the contract, actually. I just remembered. I knew that I had the option to do it. I wanted to do it. I've been wanting to do an audiobook all of my life. I told Paula the first day I got in here, this was a dream come true. My first day I started doing this, I thought I don't want to do this. I was going to call up my agent and said, please get an actor to do this. But, I was hoping I'd be able to do the audiobook.
So someone else is wondering what you enjoy about recording the audiobook.
Do
you enjoy it?
I do. I do enjoy. I like the sound. I like the idea of sounds. I like the idea of the characters and different sounds of the characters. And I like one of the engineers yesterday was talking about he found there was so much emotion in the audio element of it. And I want to bring that to the people. I really want to bring this idea of like up and down and fast, oh my God, ratcheted up life and a really slow, depressed life to the reader. So that idea of using just your voice as that tool is really fascinating. I mean, I really have great respect for narrators who do these books, anyone who does these books, because I think it's extraordinarily hard work. But I do like it very much.
Good.
Is that it?
That's it.
All
Yeah,
right,
we have
back.
some more, but let's hear some more.
All right, sure.
All right, here we are. The sentence we're on, I'd have to endure.
Okay, I'd have to endure an hour of questioning before I could get my hands on medication. Hello, David, she said. Then after looking around the room, she tossed me a glance that After looking around the room, she tossed me a glance that apologized for the mess. Occupational hazard.
David, I'm sorry. Can we have the ED on apologize?
Sure. Then, after looking around the room, she tossed me a glance that apologized for the mess. Occupational hazard. I was expecting someone all pinched, with hard edges and points, wearing a Chanel suit. She came across more like a kindergarten teacher, slightly plump with billowy clothes. The pile of hair on her head looked as if she had misplaced it. I liked her immediately. Dr. Griffin didn't tell me much. Okay, she was very much like she was talking to a 6-year-old. Okay,
Yeah.
Dr. Griffin didn't tell me very much, just that he wanted you to be evaluated. If it's all right, may I ask you a few questions? She even sounded like a kindergarten teacher. Sure. She dragged over her desk chair, and we sat knee to knee. As she went through the evaluation, asking about family mental illness, suicide attempts, moodiness, odd behavior, I kept looking at my watch.
David,
Yes?
odd behaviors?
Sure. Odd behaviors. I kept looking at my watch. I was on lunch break from an advertising job. I'd had to drop out of school again, but unlike at CMU, I was determined to return.
Just put a tiny bit of emphasis on determined.
Determined.
Take it from, but unlike it's DMU.
Okay. But unlike at CMU, I was determined to return. After I cataloged my history from House of Wax to practically that morning...
David, yeah, let's get the I'd. This is D on
Ooh,
the end there.
friggin' Ides, okay. After I'd cataloged my history from House of Wax to practically that morning, she offered up her diagnosis, the same as David Lindsay's. Depression with anxiety features. I didn't have the strength to fight it any longer. I nodded in agreement. She went on to describe the process of starting psychotropic medication. Psychotropic?
Yeah, it's true.
Okay. She went on to describe the process of starting... psychotropic medication, which would screw with my brain chemistry in a way that made it seem like I was on... Which would...
What will work, yeah.
Where am I clear from?
In a way that made it seem like I was embarking.
Great. In a way that made it seem like I was embarking on some grand and magical journey like Huck Finn or Pee Wee Herman. Finally, she patted the top of her desk until she found a prescription pad. "This," she said, scribbling, "is for Prozac." The same drug I'd tossed in my sock drawer the year before and never taken. Could all of this been avoided? When she saw my face, she misunderstood and gave me an empathetic pout.
Yeah, hang on. Let's get the have in there once again. Could all this have?
Could all of this have? Sure.
Could all
this have had?
Could
all this have been?
Yeah, that's right.
Sometimes you forget what you write. You don't know what your words are. You go, who the hell wrote this friggin' book? It wasn't me. Could all of this have been avoided? No, that's not the wondering voice. Could all of this have been avoided? When she saw my face, she misunderstood and gave me an empathetic pout. "Oh, David, don't worry. It's not the end of the world. Don't worry, it's not the end of the world. I'm sure you'll be back to your old self in no time."
Let's just do her one more time. You know,
Sure.
she's the kindergarten teacher.
Okay.
And empathetic pout. You can be slightly pouty, but it's more, I think, compassionate pout.
Okay.
Oh, David, don't you know?
Sure. All right. "Oh, David, don't worry. It's not the end of the world. I'm sure you'll be back to your old self in no time." She handed me the piece of paper and stood, a Buddhist smile on her face. "It was a pleasure to meet you," she said, shaking my hand. I half expected her to offer me a lollipop. "And good luck." When I was almost out the door, I turned around. "Where's the nearest drugstore?" "Where's the nearest drugstore?" There's a Dwayne Reed.
Say it 3 times. Dwayne Reed,
Dwayne Reed.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm going to change it to what's the other one? There's a Walmart.
How about a
Walgreen.
How about a Rite Aid?
Yeah, Rite Aid. That's much easier. There's a Dwayne Reed on the first floor. That's her voice. There's a Dwayne Reed on the first floor of this building. I waited in line at the pharmacy. If it was true that 1 in 5 people...
Let's go back, and I waited in line at the pharmacy.
Yeah, because this next part
yes,
is really important.
Yes, you're just thinking about it.
Okay.
And this is what I'm doing.
I waited in line at the pharmacy. If it was true that 1 in 5 people take drugs for mental illness, there had to be at least one other nut here.
Let's have one other again.
But there had to be at least one other nut here.
It sounded like you added a but. Take it from there had to be.
There had to be at least one other nut here. But they all looked normal. I was sure I had mental defect scrawled in fire engine red lipstick across my forehead. When it was my turn at the register, my face burned. I handed the prescription to the clerk, who looked at it. The first person who would know my secret. "It'll be a half hour." That was it. No judgment, no hooded glance to a coworker. Just annoyance that I didn't step out of the line quick enough. Just annoyance. Just annoyance that I didn't step out of line. Just annoyance that I didn't step out of line quick enough. When I got the medication, I ripped out the bottle and tossed the bag in the garbage can on the street corner.
Okay, so that's just not when I got the medication.
Okay.
You know, we need to see you doing that.
Okay.
You know, and that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. What?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, let's go. Hello,
So-
hello.
Seems like a lot of work. And a lot of people are wondering how many hours a day you record or how many pages you record at a time.
The first day we recorded 90 pages, right?
Yes, approximately.
And how many hours a day do we do this?
6. But we do have breaks.
We do have breaks.
We have a nice lunch.
We have a very nice lunch, which they pay for, and but it's about 6 hours a day. Today, we're probably going to go longer because we're doing this for you lovely folks at home.
Thank you.
So thank you for making me work overtime. But yeah, it's a tremendous. The first night I went home, I collapsed. I went to bed, I think, about 8:30 and slept about 9 hours. It's so exhausting. Because the emotion's there too, you know. I've cried through this. I've laughed through this. You know, you relive your life. Some really dark, really awful moments.
And you said this was a really important scene. Can you tell us what's happening in the scene?
Sure. This is the very first time that I am actually taking medication for being a nut job. I've never taken medication before for any kind of mental illness. The last time I was prescribed medication, which is why my shrink wanted to kick my ass up between my shoulder blades, was because I took it, put it in my sock drawer, and never took it after that and put it down the toilet. So now it happened all over again. He thought I'd actually had medication with that floor he was talking about, and I had no floor. So this is actually me giving in to modern science, modern chemistry, actually taking medication for some mental illness, but we don't know what it is yet at this point. That's why it's so important.
Okay.
Is that it?
For now, you're just getting a lot of praise right now, to be honest.
Oh, thank you. Buy the book. Buy the book. Please buy the book. Okay.
All right, so we're back to
When I got the medication.
Yes.
Okay. When I got the medication, I ripped out the bottle and tossed the bag in the garbage can on the street corner.
Let's have. I ripped out the bottle. You know, just a drop of anger there.
Sure. I ripped out the bottle and tossed the bag in the garbage can on the street corner. Then I thought better of it and stuffed it in my pocket. I didn't want it. I didn't want.
Then I thought better of it,
Okay.
and you know, I'm maybe gonna have to do this.
Then I thought better of it and stuffed it in my pocket. I didn't want to take any chances. I didn't want to take a chance. I didn't want to take a chance that anyone I knew would find it and know I was on Prozac, as if I had friends who rummaged through Midtown trash bins.
Okay, here's David Leite's little tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
We got to get that out. So
Okay.
And then also David Leite
Yeah.
Leitism by saying somebody's going to find this bottle and know I'm on Prozac. I know they are. Somebody who knows me. That's a David Leitism. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of a fearful thing there. So
Okay.
then I thought better of stuff.
Okay.
I didn't want to take the chance. It's like, holy cow, what if they did?
Okay.
And then the tongue in cheek.
Okay.
As if.
So we're starting at.
Let's just take it from the top of that paragraph, and then we'll move on.
Got it. When I got the medication, I ripped it out of the bottle. Yeah. When I got the medication, I ripped out the bottle and tossed the bag in the garbage. I ripped out the bottle and tossed the bag in the garbage can on the street corner. Then I thought better of it and stuffed it in my pocket. I didn't want to take a chance that anyone I knew would find it and know I was on Prozac, as if I have friends who rummage through Midtown trash bins.
Yeah, that was perfect, David. As if I had friends.
It wasn't perfect. Okay. As if I had friends. As if I had friends who rummaged through Midtown trash bins. My hands shook as I popped a pill in my mouth.
Just a drop of emotion there.
It's not going to be hard. My hand.
You take your time, David.
Oh, fuck me. Sorry. Oh! Edit. My hands shook as I popped a pill in my mouth. I leaned against the wall and waited. I knew there was a 6 to 8 week ramp-up time, but there were exceptions. I closed my eyes and tilted my face to the sun, waiting for the drug to wash through me like an excellent Malbec, soothing my jangled nerves. I imagined that floor David Lindsay had talked about reassembling itself under my feet. This is the hard part.
Yeah.
This is my father.
I know.
All right. I imagine that floor.
Yes,
That
that's
one?
good.
Okay. Mm. Yeah.
How about you? Would you like to take a little break?
No, unless this
You wanna
question.
go
No,
ahead?
I want to get through this. Is just
Sure,
when I
sure.
get through this emotion, then I'm okay.
All
Then
right.
I get bitchy. That's good. Bitchy is good.
Then. All right.
I imagine that floor David Lindsay had talked about reassembling itself under my feet. 3/4 oak, I remember my father saying of the floors he'd laid down in our house. I wanted to be standing on a floor built by my father. The thought made me feel better, hopeful. Or was it the Prozac? It wasn't. Nor was it Remeron, which replaced Prozac a few months later.
David, can we have replaced once again?
Sure. Nor was it Remeron, which replaced Prozac a few months later, courtesy of a patronizing shit of a doctor. Nor was it Remeron, which replaced Prozac a few months later, courtesy of a patronizing shit of a doctor, when I reported I wasn't feeling much better. I think he had more of an issue with the fact that the dispensing doctor had been a child psychiatrist and a woman than the drug itself. Wellbutrin, Sirzone, and Deseril were all crossed off the list.
We're also?
Yeah. And Deseril were also crossed off the list. While I waited for relief, my thoughts turned dark and violent. When I spoke to people, I terrified myself, imagining what a knife jabbing into their ribcage would... I terrified myself, imagining what a knife jabbing into their ribcage would sound like. When writing, I kept seeing my fingers being chopped off by a cleaver. I became fixated on my looks. I spent hours staring at myself in the mirror like I'd done when I was a teenager. I was convinced a facelift would make me feel better. Can you hear my computer suddenly making noises? Shoot.
Okay.
Why is that doing that?
Well,
Sometimes it does, but usually the engineer, Rich will hear it.
Should I continue or just...
I think we need to stop until that.
Yeah.
Maybe it just needs to cool. I'll hold it up a little
Yeah.
bit. Are there questions?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is obviously a very emotional, personal story. Why did you decide to share this story?
I decided to share this story because I was going to write a little cute book that was going to be a collection of very funny essays that I'd written on my website, Leite's Culinaria, and other ones that I'm talking to you, and other ones that I was going to write for it. And then I wrote a blog post on my site called Julia Child, Bipolar Disorder, and Julia Child, My Therapist. And part of that ended up being in here, talking about being a kid with something terribly wrong with me, not knowing what it was, and then later on discovering that it was manic depression. The response I got to that, I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments, people saying, you know, I'm so glad you wrote this because no one believes me, or this is what I have. I think my husband may have this. But it was the one that came from my mother. It was an email that she wrote to me, and she said, thank you so much for what you did. It was so beautiful. I can relate to that. She said, I only wish my son would have read it before he killed himself. And I realized that there was something about my story that maybe can help other people. You know, I'm not one of the people who, thankfully, who have such a severe form of this. So I'm able to do, like, communicate and write and stuff. And I thought that there's something there that might be able to help other people. They can relate to it. They can maybe find hope in it, maybe a little bit of humor in it. I mean, humor is extraordinarily important with something that's chronic like this. So that's the reason why I chose to do it.
Somebody is saying it's not easy. It's not as easy as it seems. Sometimes we have feelings within us, but we find it so hard to express ourselves in an apt voice. Did you find it difficult to express yourself at any point, or did it kind of flow naturally?
In the writing of the book?
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a hard time finding ways of saying the same thing over and over again. I mean, having a panic attack 8 times in the book, I mean, how do you describe that differently? So that's where I had those sort of technical challenges, but I think this stuff was in me, and it just, even though it took a very long time to write, because I'm a perfectionist, but I think that I didn't have a problem getting the emotions on the page. I had a problem making sure I had saying it the right way that would engage the audience, and that I wanted you to be in my head. I wanted you to hear the rhythms in my head, so I have short sentences that go very fast with a lot of consonants when I'm kind of manic. I'm talking to you. And more legato and longer ones and longer words when I'm more depressed. And that was some of the challenges for me.
Yeah, it's so well thought out, like everything.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
Thank you.
I'm sure everyone in the audience, including myself, is dying to read this book now.
Oh, thank you.
And it's called Notes on a Banana.
Notes on a Banana, a
Why is
memoir
it
of
called
food, love, and manic depression.
Why is it called?
Why is it called Notes on a Banana? It's a very good question. The reason is, ever since I was a child, I'm going to close this so it gets cool. Ever since I was a child, I would wake up, and at my spot at the, we had a snack bar. We didn't have a kitchen table. It was a very cool snack bar my father built. Would be a banana, and on it my mother would write, "We love you. God bless. Have a good day!" Exclamation points, little hearts, every single day. And I am 56 years old. I go home and see them, and at the snack bar when I wake up is a banana from my mother and father with all these things written on them. So there's that element. There's also the element of banana being a food, and of course there's food in this. And notes on a banana. People, call people who have mental illness banana. They're bananas. So it's kind of like notes on a crazy person. Mm-hmm. And there is the gay element, and there is sort of a shape to a banana, which kind of is reminiscent of a certain part of a male's anatomy. That kind of subconscious little thing there. So we felt it was a very apt one. The original title was called Happiness Backwards, but I changed it because when I posted one of my mother's bananas, which is on my Instagram, people went wild. They went bananas. They went wild from my mother having done this. And I realized there's just gold in Notes on a Banana. So that's how it fell in. And then all these themes just started falling into place.
Yeah.
Hey, David, how's your computer? Is it cooled down now?
It does seem to be cooled down. Shall we continue?
Okay. Yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to take it from I Became Fixated.
Okay.
And we're going to take it down to Standing There in My Underwear. And
Okay.
I think that's where we're going to conclude.
Stand in my underwear.
Yes.
And underwear is where?
It's like 12 lines from the bottom. It's where you're standing, you're going out to the roof deck.
And before you start,
Okay.
I just want to remind the audience that we're with David Leite, and he's reading from his book, Notes on a Banana, and please feel free to ask him anything.
I will answer all the ones that you type
Exactly.
out. I'm happy to do that for you.
So, sorry to interrupt.
Okay. I became fixated on my looks. Is that where we are?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
I became fixated on my looks. I spent hours staring at myself in the mirror like I'd done when I was a teenager. I was convinced a facelift would make me feel better. I imagined my face slid open and peeled back. I curled my lips so they didn't look so full. I wanted...
David, I'm sorry, so that thing?
I curled my lips so that they didn't look so full. I wanted a tight hyphen of a wasp smile, nothing too ethnic. Turning my head to the side, I ran my fingers over the bump in my Neanderthal brow.
A bump of my?
I ran my fingers over the bump of my Neanderthal brow. I wanted it smashed and reconstructed so there would be just the slightest divot at the top of my nose. Speaking of noses, it would be whittled flat and pointy, something you'd see on General Hospital or The Young and the Restless. The widow's hump would be snapped, and I'd have the posture of a 16-year-old ballet student. David Lindsay was worried, I could tell.
Obey that comma.
Okay.
David Lindsay was worried.
I love when she says it, obey that comma. David Lindsay was worried. I could tell. During the 8 years I'd been seeing him, he'd never seen me like this. I looked awful. I was getting too little sleep. Not because it felt like my veins were pumping with quicksilver. Quicksilver, not
It's quicksilver.
Quicksilver. Not because it felt like my veins were being pumped with quicksilver, like before.
We're pumping with?
Not because it felt like my veins were pumping with, thank you. Not because it felt like my veins were pumping with quicksilver like before, but because I couldn't stay asleep. Even the sleeping medication didn't help much. In the middle of the night, I'd slip out of bed and step out onto the roof deck.
More slowly on this one, please. Let's have the image.
In the middle of the night, I'd slip out of the bed and step out onto the roof deck.
David, out of bed?
I'd slip out of bed and step out onto the roof.
Just take it from in the middle.
In the middle of the night, I'd slip out of bed and step out onto the roof deck. Standing there in my underwear, I'd look down and wonder if 5 stories were enough.
I'd look down.
I'd look
down and wonder if 5 stories were enough.
I'd look down and wonder if 5 stories were enough.
Fantastic, David. So good. You're off to such a wonderful start this morning.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions before we go? Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Cover.
This is, okay. That's the cover. Beautiful neon blue cover.
Perfect. I have a question that maybe someone out here can answer.
Sure.
So, do you want to go out here? Okay, let's go. Thank you. So I'm not sure if anyone can, but how long does the editing process usually take once the audio recording is finished?
Rich, would you like to answer those questions?
Yeah, sure. They're already editing the project. This is day 5, so they've been editing since day 2. So they'll probably be done with everything we do after we finish today by Monday or Tuesday. It's a pretty fast turnaround for something like this.
And tell them about the quality control thing. That's astounding.
Oh, yeah. Well, so we have Paula and I doing quality control on the front end. So we're checking the script as we're reading. We're making all these markings for the editors to know where the right take is. And then as soon as we pass this over to the editors, there's a person editing who will splice all of it together and make just one continuous file. And then we have 2 rounds of quality control after that who listen for any noises in the room, any mouth clicks, any other things that we might have missed along the way. And then after 2 rounds of that, it gets passed off to Harper. And then Harper will listen to it as well, I believe, and do their own QC. So there's 5 or 6 steps of quality control in this process.
It's amazing. The amount of work and the number of people that goes into one recording. It's the enormous respect I have for these people and for these authors and for these directors and technicians is astounding after this experience.
And Paula, as the director, you were telling us before, but it was such a good answer, why you find audio recordings of books so great or important.
Yeah, well, I've been doing this for a couple of decades now, and I really enjoy working with authors and actors. And when a person, a talent, is in the booth, you know, it's very personal. Author, especially if, you know, because they've written the book, and then an actor because they're interpreting the book. And people are very vulnerable in that space. While it's almost, in some ways, it's really, once you get a flow going, it's a meditative experience. But I try to be as conscientious about people's feelings and the fact that they're vulnerable as I possibly can be. And there's something about the artistic, spirit that I love. And, I try to be, I try to, I want to direct them, but I try to be judicious about stopping people. Because I want them to have their interpretation in it as much as possible. But I also, when I'm listening, there are times when I feel that the way a word would lie on the listener's ear is better than what the narrator had just recorded, and so I always tell them, let's see how this sounds.
Yes.
And then it's listening to audiobooks is very much a narrator and a listener experience, and so it's more close to. In terms of acting, it's more close to film acting than it is to stage, for instance, because you don't want to be too big, because the listener has only the sense of sound, and you have to help them visualize as they're listening. And so, if you're too big or if you're too loud, it doesn't give any room for them to participate. And listener participation is a very big piece of this. And also, as a director, being very conscious of the vulnerability that a narrator is experiencing in the booth. And so those are things that I try to be aware of when I'm working.
No, we are actually
Out of time.
I want to thank you, David, so much
Thank
for
you so
joining
much
us
for
and
coming.
everyone in here.
Thanks for listening.
Yes.
Tuning in.
And you can go through the Facebook questions and answer
Sure,
them.
I'll be happy to do that.
Yeah.
It's on Bookstr, right?
It's on Bookstr.
I'll do that. I'll
Yeah.
be happy to do that.
Thank you so much.